Hi guys, Dr. J again. In today's video, we're going to go over how do you actually physically lead worship when you're on for a Sunday morning set or some other kind of praise night or something like this, right? So how does that actually work? You have to think actually in kinds of two things. If you're the worship leader and you have a team and you're not by yourself, like you have other people you're playing with, you're kind of leading two sets of people simultaneously. I think we did cover this briefly in a previous video, but this video is going to be kind of focused on all of those little kind of tips and things that I've kind of learned along the way that I can share with you, kind of how do you do it. So again, you're going to split it up into kind of two different things. If you're the worship leader, you're simultaneously leading your team as you are leading the congregation, okay? So when you're, and so you want to kind of, whatever you do, you want it to kind of mean the same thing to them as it is to you. When I'm saying them, like this is, I'm talking about the team. So you want like some kind of visual cue or audible cue, something. You want something obvious to signal to your team so that you can also do the same signal to the congregation. So at the end of the day, who you're really leading, you're leading both simultaneously. You kind of have to do both. But the real purpose is that you can kind of gather your team together so that the team is together with you. That you're kind of effectively one unit, one kind of body, and then you're with one voice. You'll be able to kind of go forward with something so that the congregation can then in turn and take in whatever you're doing, and that they can be led by your actions and your lyrics and words. Okay. So that's kind of important to make sure you have that down. So that duality is kind of something that can't, that doesn't go away. Okay, so how does that work? Let's take the example of an actual song. Let's take "This Is Amazing Grace" by Phil Wickham. We just used this song for another video, and I think it's a familiar one, so let's turn to it. I think it's a pretty good example. So let's say when you are, let's say you've just done the bridge, right? You've just done the bridge, you're returning back to the chorus, right? But we're not clear how many times we're repeating the bridge, because in this song, the bridge could be repeated multiple times, right? So you want to give those cues, right? So the number one tip is to be able to call out the actual words, like 2 or 3 words of what we're doing, right? So if we call out where we're going, then then it's obvious, right? So in this situation, the bridge starts with "Worthy is the Lamb." Chorus begins with "This is Amazing Grace." So by calling out the lyrics, it works because the lyrics are different, right? So let's go with bridge, right? Worthy is a lamb who was slain. Worthy is a king who conquered the grave. Worthy is a lamb who was slain. Worthy is a king who conquered the grave. Worthy is the lamb. Worthy is a lamb who was slain. Worthy is a king who conquered the grave. Worthy is a lamb who was slain. Worthy, oh, this is amazing grace. So in that situation, it was pretty obvious where I was going at that time, and that's the second tip we're going to use, is you can use your instrumentation to guide where we're going. So the second time I played that bridge, you heard me, I was kind of like crescendoing, making it louder, and then in this situation, the song makes it very obvious, in fact, the lyrics change in that final bridge before we go back to the chorus. So that's kind of an obvious cue. You're doing both musical stuff and you're doing a lyric change to be able to guide everyone where we're going, okay? But then before we get to the lyric change of that last iteration of the bridge, how does the team know that that this is our last time, right? So there's 2 things we can say. You can say one last time worthy, right? So one last time worthy is a lamb. So then now the congregation knows that this is our last repeat, and the team knows this is our last time, so that you don't have to kind of say anything else. You're saying one last time, so it is the last time, unless you kind of have to mean it now. So that's one thing, right? And then in this situation, again, it's very obvious when I made the sound of my strum different. I escalated the thing, so now I climax, and then you kind of have to go down from there, right? You climb the ladder, now you have to go down the slide, right? That's kind of how this goes, right? So that's the second tip. Use the musical things. Another cue you can say besides just saying, worthy is a lamb, if you can't, let's say, think of the lyrics, let's say your head is somewhere else, or you just can't remember, and you want to just sing it again, then you can say, sing it again, or let's do that again, you want to use those kind of cues so that everyone knows, all right, we are singing again. Let's repeat it, any kind of synonym for the same thing, you can use, and make sure you kind of put that in there as kind of like, part of your regular lexicon. When you're actually going with this and you're leading worship, practice doing it. It's important that you practice that. So it's kind of knee-jerk. When you want to do it again, you're not fishing for words like no. It should be just sing it again. And that way it's very clear where we're going, right? And the more you do it, the more you kind of attach that word. So let's repeat it, right? Let's say let's repeat it is your phrase, right? Then your congregation, after being led by you a few times, kind of gets used to you and like learns that that's what you say to repeat a phrase, right? Then then it kind of goes both ways. They learn you, and then you're used to doing it, and it's helpful, right? So those kind of important cues, right? So musical cueing, lyric cueing, okay? It's very important, okay? Now, arguably, the harder challenge of worship leadership is actually leading your team, because there's much more elements that can go wrong between you and your team than between you and the congregation. All the congregation's asked to do is sing the lyrics, and they're not being tasked to, let's say, harmonize, or they're not doing anything special. They're just singing the lyrics, right? The team, although, has a lot of aspects that they have to kind of work with you in terms of timing of a special thing. Let's say, for the example, a good example is, let's say, the reentry to the chorus in Lion and the Lamb, in that song, right? So when you're going back in there, there's this kind of interesting, our God is a lion, the Lion of Judah, right? And that's the beginning of the chorus. When you're coming from the bridge, going back into the chorus, let's actually bring it up in this thing, Lion and the Lamb. Let's pull it up. In the situation, the bridge, who can stop the Lord, right? So we're going, who can stop the Lord? Our God is the Lion of Judah. You know how it's doing that thing, right? So in that situation, the most important thing is to kind of be together, right? Like, well, how do you do that? Like, how are you doing it together? Well, that takes practice and that takes rehearsal. So believe it or not, kind of part of the worship leadership in terms of how do you cue your band in terms of like when you're actually there on a Sunday worship set, a big part of that is rehearsal. You have to rehearse with your team. This stuff has to be worked out, and you have to be together, right? Because when you're being silent and you have to crash in together, everyone had better jump in at the same time. It's almost like taking that group photo shot where everyone's like jumping in the air, right? And if you want to nail it, and you only have one chance at this, right? Like you don't have redos when you're doing a live set. You only have one chance at this, and you had better rehearse this right? So you have to make sure that your whole team's on board, and you do that over and over again. Any of these things where timing becomes critical, right? And where everyone's really exposed. So if someone's coming in too early, it's like painfully obvious that the bass came in early, or the drum kind of hit something too early. Like, you feel kind of like, man, I missed that opportunity as a worship leader. Like that could have went better, right? And so it's important in these things. You rehearse. Like totally critical that you rehearse those kind of kind of interesting bits that you do as a team. So rehearsal is actually very, very important. What about other things that are unrehearsed type things, or let's say how do you end a song, right? Let's go back to Lion and the Lamb again. When you want to end this song, right? There's this like that thing, right? When you're ending the song. So when you're playing the ending, actually, you can you can play it a number of times, and it's not clear when is this going to end. So it's exactly same problem with the congregation as the team. They're not sure how many times we're going to do this, right? So you can go usually it's 2 times. obvious there, right? You can keep going, but there's one thing you can do, is you have to kind of look at the drummer. The drummer is your main go-to guy with these type of things. If the drummer is not with you, then you're done. You know, like you have to be with the drummer. So if you're going and you look over the drummer, so the timing of the look back to end the song, you have kind of one of two opportunities. Okay. With these songs, the songs usually are organized in 4 bars, 4-bar phrases. Let's unpack that and then see if this is even true for Lion and the Lamb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. That was 4 bars. So I don't know if you kind of understood kind of my counting scheme. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 4. You know, so that was a 4-bar thing. So when you're the worship leader, you have 2 opportunities to kind of look back on your team to say, this is the last time we're doing it, right? So most of these motifs are only 4 bars long. At the beginning, of that 4-bar thing, you look at your team. This is the last time we're doing this 4-bar thing, right? So let's do that. We're gonna do this a 4-bar thing twice. And you're looking. Now it's obvious, like, oh, he gave the look. This is the last time, okay? Let's say you forgot to give the look at that point, and you're like, oh man, what do? I do have to wait for another whole 4-bar thing? No, you can actually do it at the 4th bar of that thing. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. You can see at the beginning of the 4th bar is your final opportunity to kind of do that look back, so you can kind of end the song. So those are the two places, all right? The beginning of the 4-bar thing and the 4th bar is your opportunity. The other opportunity here is how to start a song right. And there's kind of a couple ways to figure this out. And some of it really depends on who's playing the beginning intro, right? So the cueing person is usually the worship leader, but let's say it's a song that does not call on the acoustic guitar to play in the beginning of the intro, then you're kind of left with someone else doing it. So a lot of times it's the keys. So you have to let the key kind of do the cueing. So they're gonna go 1, 2, 3, and they start playing. And so the pianist at this point has to kind of, right? So if the pianist is playing with an electric, the 2 of them, right? You can kind of decide between the 2, but a lot of times it's a keyboardist that's cueing, right? So you're doing a body cue, right? And same thing with an acoustic guitar. Let's say you are leading, right? And let's say it's you and the keys, and let's say you're the worship leader on the guitar. Then you go, and you can kind of shake. You see I'm doing this headstock rattle, like 1, 2, 3, right? So it's very obvious where I'm going. I'm going this with my whole body, like, right? So it's very obvious that I'm gonna 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So like this pickup at the 4th beat of the bar is when you kind of go like when you start cueing, okay? That's what you can do as a worship leader without saying anything. You're not saying 1, 2, 3, 4. You're just going, right? So without saying anything, you cued everyone. You know, we know where we're going, okay? For a faster song, a lot of times that's the drummer, and they're doing just click. You know, they're clicking in. But it's kind of silly, kind of for a slower song to have a drummer, clicking. Especially for a slower song, drummer's probably not even playing anything. So it's important as whoever's going to start off, the body cue. It's kind of important. Okay. So I think that's it that we're going to cover for today. Keep on playing.